In today's session, we're actually going to be talking about securing APIs, right? How do we make APIs more secure, right? And there's a number of ways of actually doing this, and we're going to be covering some best practices, right? Before that, let's look at the landscape here in terms of the security issues that we have, right? So first of all, we can actually have vulnerabilities associated with our API endpoint that malicious actors can take advantage of. We also have our attack surface here that the external intruders are trying to access here. And then we also have our attack vector here, which is the API means of actually getting into the system here. Right? And if we look at some of the issues, the common attacks associated with APIs, we have SQL injection here. And with SQL injection, what it is the whole purpose is to gain access and control to the SQL database, right? Another aspect is DDoS, right? So what we can have is we can have multiple API connections with multiple API requests to try to bring that API endpoint down, right? Then obviously we have cross-site scripting. So and basically your cross-site scripting is inserting scripts into our endpoint there, and also we have man in the middle here, right? So we basically know that the endpoint here and the client app here are trusting each other, and there isn't some kind of malicious act or something happening in the middle there, right? So really those are kind of like some of our threats here that we covered. What we really want to do is how do we mitigate against these risks and these threats here? What can we do here, right? So if we look at it from like a high level perspective, right, let's just look at SQL injection, right? With SQL injection here, what we really want to do is we want to validate and sanitize all those API requests, right? And also limit the responses to that data that's been sent back to them. Make sure that there's no sensitive data going back, right? And also again with the cross-site scripting, we want to validate that input, and we want to make sure that the right necessary filtering is taking place. And with the DDoS, we want to ensure that there's rate limiting happening. And one of the things that we can do here is like cloud service providers actually do provide an API gateway, right? So we can put an API gateway in front of our API endpoint, and that can help us, mitigate anything related to actually DDoS kind of attacks, right? And then with the man in the middle kind of approach, what we can simply do is we can simply ensure that our packets are encrypted using SSL, right? So if we kind of like look in terms of the kind of like the best practices that we really want to be doing here, is that we want to prioritize security obviously within your organization. We want to make sure that API security is just as critical and important just like any other security, right? And with the APIs, we want to basically be inventorying and managing all those APIs. So an organization is going to have a huge number of these APIs, right? An easy way of doing this is to do a perimeter scan, right? With the APIs, we also want to be able to do OAuth and OpenID connect, which is basically our authorization and our authentication. We want to make sure that our APIs are using least privilege. We want to make sure that we don't expose any data, right? Then it's necessary using the APIs, right? So we want to enforce data access controls at the API levels. We also want to validate our input, and I mentioned before that helps with the SQL injection, cross-site scripting, the rate limiting that actually happens, and a number of ways we can rate limit our traffic for the DDoS kind of protections, whether it's to use an API gateway. And also additionally, in addition to the API gateway, I'm just going to put it over here, is we also want to use a WAF, web application firewall, and what it's really doing is inspecting those API payloads for those malicious attacks that can happen on the API, like SQL injections, cross-site scripting, etc., and also look at those OWASP top 10 security risks as well to web applications as well, right? So a WAF will help us to mitigate that. But remember, a key element here is that APIs can be powerful, and exposure from an API attack can also lead to kind of like attacks on your network here as well, right? So it's providing, essentially APIs provide the keys to the kingdom and basically a route basically into your network, right? So it's important to secure your APIs. Thank you.